call this meeting of Personnel and Animal Welfare to order. We'll start with public comment. I have one speaker, Mr. Armando Herman. He is not present. No other public comment, so we will close public comment. Item number one.
Item number one, communication from the mayor relative to the exemption of one fire statistical manager and one public safety employee relations manager from civil service pursuant to Charter Section 1001B.
And I'm just taking this item as because we have a speaker on it, but if you'd like to give us just a very brief comment.
Councilman, if you want to approve this on consent, I would be very happy to go sit back down.
Well, I'll let you stay up there until we've heard from Mr. Herman on item number one.
First and foremost, I want to make sure that if we have a quorum, I see that Mr. Felipe Fuentes and Mr. O'Farrell are not present for this quorum. And it's talking about public safety for employees relations manager for civil service pursuant to this charter, section 101, parentheses B. Now, before we conduct any further business of the city on behalf of the public and the greater public's interest, I remind you that it is unethical to conduct business on behalf of the people, especially more so because of, charter rules, city charter. And I'm making a, oh great, Mr. O'Farrell just showed up a little late, but meeting started at about 3:25.
Mr. Herman, if you could speak to the subject at hand.
Well, now that we have a quorum, yes, I can speak on the subject of matter of material here, Mr. Paul Koretz. In regards to one public safety employee, on this agenda here, it doesn't specifically state for the record the amount due for this employment. It does not suggest anything more than what I just simply read on behalf of relative to the exemption of one fire statistical manager. Now, the word exemption, again, as brought out by Hollywood Highland John Walsh and myself, is a very particular element of disruption in meetings, and it definitely has no standing because, again, it's a conflict of interest in regards to the public. Let us not continue business like this with the words exemption, lien, tax hold, and so forth. Again, I oppose to this due to the material matter that it doesn't bring out enough application for this process. Thank you.
And for the record, Mr. O'Farrell has joined us, and if you don't have any questions or comments on item one, I would move item one without objection. I'd like to ask also that we approve item 2 and 3 on consent without objection. And item 4. Item 4.
Item number 4, Joint Chief Legislative Analyst, City Administrative Officer report relative to administrative bond expenditure agreement and bond spending plan and establishment of a bond oversight committee. This matter has also been referred to the Economic Development Committee.
And has this already been heard at Economic Development?
It has, last Tuesday.
Okay, so if you could walk us briefly through this.
Okay. Good afternoon, Chair and Committee Member. My name is Oscar Ishko. I'm with the Office of the Chief Legislative Analyst.
Josh Romer with the City Administrative Officer's Office.
The item before you pertains to a City Council approved bond expenditure agreement and related bond spending plan entered into with CRAL, a former redevelopment agency of the city. Dissolution law allows for successor agencies to continue spending excess bond proceeds that have been unobligated pre-2011 for the purpose in which they were intended. The agency, being in a state that does not have the capacity to take on that task, has allowed the city to take the excess bond proceeds and continue spending them for that purpose, the purpose in which they were issued, and for projects, programs, and activities that benefit not only the city but the affected taxing entities. In total, there is $84.1 million that has been transferred already to the city. It's sitting with the Controller's Office, and there have been individual accounts set up for each of the project areas. If in your report, Attachment B provides an itemized list of the individual amounts per project area, and it's further divided into taxable versus non-tax exempt bond proceeds. There will be a further breakdown that would be provided to each council district as far as the percentage, the acreage percentage that is covered by each one of those project areas. So that will be something that's forthcoming. But what's most important for this committee is the staffing that will be needed to cover the administrative work for the expenditure of the bond spend, the excess bond proceeds. So that is what Josh is going to be covering at this point.
Right, and that was really the only question I was going to ask, so that's perfect.
Yes, so the implementation of the funding program, there will be a significant workload that's represented. The expectations are that the Economic Workforce Development Department will take on the bulk of the implementation, potentially with other departments. The CAO's office will also have a role in terms of oversight, administration, and tracking the bond amounts. Fortunately, the bond proceeds can cover the entirety of the staffing costs for the first 5 years, and the additional, there's a full 10 years that the bond expenditure agreement is in existence. So the report before you asks for EWD to return with a proposed staffing program, and also asks for approval for one position for a principal project coordinator in the CAO's office for administrative purposes. That position, we will be requesting an exemption for it. It would be a resolution authority for 5 years for full-time, and for years 6 through 10 of the agreement, it would be a part-time position. But as we said, all staffing costs would be paid for through the bond proceeds.
Great. Mr. O'Farrell, any other?
And that answered my question. Thank you.
Good.
And we have one speaker from the public, Mr. Herman.
I really believed and thought that the CRLA was condemned or done with, according to the reports from Mr. Brown, our governor, but apparently not. I see that there is monies being forwarded to this account under CRLA for bond oversight committees. That needs to stop. Return the money back to Sacramento. Had the CRLA funded all these projects that they promised the public with these grandeur, huge facilities to put people who are homeless, to put the VAs who are homeless into these so-called large density locations for housing or homes, whatever you want to call them. You disrupted many lives by all these lies of not meeting the conditions of the bond expenditure agreement, bond spending plan, environmental impact which you've created, large, multiple housing creates water problems. More water is needed to satisfy the agreements of how water is piped in to large complexes throughout the city of Los Angeles. But because we are talking about this instruction by the chief analyst of the CRLA, CLA, whatever you want to name it, Jerry Brown said its demise is over. Return all the monies, stop the abuse. There was much fraud, corruption involved in this process. If I am mistakenly wrong, then someone would have stopped me, but I believe I am politically correct. Stop the fraud, the waste, and the abuse of the taxpayers' money which you've created. CRLA is done.
Thank you, Mr. Herman. And if there's no other questions or comments, we will move this item without objection. I'll adopt the recommendations of the Economic Development Committee. Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen. Item number 5.
Item 5, Personnel Department report relative to civilian flex benefit program contracts and related matters.
Hi there. My name is Stephen Montagna. I'm here to represent the Personnel Department and to walk you through the information in this report, which actually comes from the city's Joint Labor Management Benefits Committee. So this is a set of recommendations related to the contracts that are involved with the administration of the flexible benefits program. This program involves contracts that cover approximately 56,000 individuals. So that includes about 24,000 civilian employees as well as approximately 32,000 dependents. And it also, on a total premium basis, involve costs of about $340 million annually.
What was that amount? I couldn't hear.
Approximately $340 million annually, and that's a combination of premiums that are paid both would be paid out of the general fund as well as the premiums paid by the employees for the particular benefits. So we offer, in the Flex program, we offer a range of different programs and currently have approximately 11 separate contracting relationships. So given the scope and the volume of what we work with, earlier this year the JLMBC created a special subcommittee to look at ways that we could make improvements to procurements and contracting. This group consisted of the CEO, the general manager of the personnel department, and also two of the labor representatives on the JLMBC, and they came back with a series of recommendations that were adopted by the JLMBC and are included within this report. So one of the things that the JLMBC did was to create a master procurements and contracting schedule. So basically, what they wanted to do was to be able to map out future procurements so that the vendor community as well as the members know when these programs are going out to bid. They also wanted to structure that schedule around the contracting terms that longer contracting terms. So right now, these contracts, when we put them out to bid, we are working with the city's general 3-year contracting schedule, and what's being requested here is a change to the administrative code that would provide an exception for the contracts under the Flex Benefits program that would allow us to enter into 5-year contracts. So there are a number of benefits that the JLMBC sees to being able to do this. So first of all, by entering into these longer-term contracts, there may be opportunities to be able to obtain more favorable terms with respect to what the actual costs of the programs are. It also creates opportunities for the vendors that we work with to invest resources if they see a longer-term relationship to invest those resources into our programs. The next item that sort of can represent what the JLMB sees as being helping to make improvements to the services and for members is that our members are able to see continuity, longer continuity in the relationships that they have, not only with the individual practitioners that they might be seeing, but also in being able to navigate the different rules and sort of the administrative infrastructure that would be unique to each individual carrier. We also see this as being able to create some efficiencies with respect to resources. So right now, what the typical process is an 18-month process. So from the time you start with the development of the RFP until the time that you would be targeting to actually execute the contract, that's about 18 months. So under a 3-year contracting schedule, that means that that window of time that you're actually working with the provider is very short before you're initiating the next procurement cycle. And then, so last, it takes away the need for needing to come to request ad hoc extensions for certain contracts, which is actually that's something that we have been doing in the past with the City Council for a number of these contracts. So, granting this exception under the Administrative Code gives us the option for this, but does not create an actual obligation to either enter into or maintain that longer-term contract. So we would maintain the ability to terminate a contract at will if we if we see that that would be in the best interests of the membership. And we also should note that the contract length doesn't impact the annual rate renewal process. That's a completely separate process. There's a completely separate discipline that's involved with that. So that would not change. In the report, we have listed some of the best practice opportunities that would also flow along with this, including opportunities for engaging our members and incorporating their feedback into the development process, looking at best practices from other agencies, being able to benchmark our programs and services against other agencies, so all of those sort of we see as being able to flow into this by having the latitude to elongate the contracting cycle. So based on this, we're requesting that the City Council approve this recommendation to grant the authority to enter into 5-year contracts, and that the Council requests that the City Attorney draft the necessary ordinance to make an amendment to the admin code that would let us implement this. And at the same time, we're recommending that the Council approve a series of contract extensions for individual contracts to basically conform to what the JLMBC would like to use as its master 5-year master 5-year schedule.
Okay, now, were you saying that if we approve this, it allows to go as long as 5 years, but it doesn't require that?
Right. So the authority under the
we could do 3 years on some of those contracts.
That could, right.
And why did we originally have the 3-year requirement in the first place?
Well, with the 3-year contracting cycle, we're basically following the city's general rules for contracts that are included. Those rules are already in the admin code. So
right. But what I'm asking is, if there are reasons that we think are effective in moving it to 5, what was the original purpose of having selecting 3 years as the number in the admin code?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know where that is.
Why would we only do it for this purpose? Why wouldn't we look at something broader?
Well, I'm not sure sort of what the history of that is for general contracts, and for there are specific carve-outs under the admin code. There are certain contracts that are exempted and have the authority for 5 years. I can't really speak to that question of whether it should be done. A change like this should be done universally.
I mean, it might be something that we should take a broader look at to see whether the value of it is just limited to this one arena or not. So is there any downside to this? Is there any possibility that by having it go 5 years, we reduce our flexibility and might be able to do this in a more cost-effective way had it been a shorter period of time?
Well, I think you want to look at each individual contract. So there may be circumstances under which as one example, if we're looking at the contracts with the medical carriers and working with our consultant, we determine that there might be there might be a need, or that we would be better served by being able to go out to bid earlier, then we could certainly do that. This would not prevent us from doing that. It's just sort of giving us the ability, when we, as a general rule, when we're going out and conducting these searches, to build, to be able to set the expectations that under normal circumstances our intention is to enter into a longer-term contracting relationship.
How do we think this impacts staff's workload?
This should make us more efficient. So, we have a lot of administrative responsibilities that are associated with a program this large. So it really does allow us to create efficiencies because we're spending less time. Right now, as I mentioned earlier, this really for us is this is a nonstop process. We are constantly in the process of either initiating the procurement or working on the contracts. So having the master schedule and having the longer time period makes us more efficient, and which in turn also helps us deliver better services to the membership.
Yeah, I've actually seen this in a completely different context. There are business improvement districts that renew at 3 years, and as soon as they renew, almost immediately they're in the process of having to renew again. It doesn't really give them time to handle things appropriately. So I see the advantage in that as well. Mr. O'Farrell, do you have any questions?
No, you have me convinced. Thank you.
I mean, it seems like a decent idea. Probably one concern is we run out of time at 3 years and then have to give an extension. I don't know how much of that is necessity and how much of it is just not planning well enough or procrastinating, getting too close and realizing you're out of time. So how do we guarantee with a broader process that we don't find ourselves in the same position but just 2 years later?
Right. Well, we have to create disciplines within the process. Now, I can tell you that actually another program that's administered out of the Personnel Department is the Deferred Compensation Plan. And a number of years ago, I think it's probably been more than 10 years now, we did go to council and request the authority for the investment contracts for that program to be able to enter into 5-year contracts. That has worked very well. So with that board and with that program, we have been able to run that to be able to run those searches on the clock. So I do think that it does help us to be able to manage workflow better, and it is nevertheless incumbent upon us to make sure that if we do have this authority, that we are running the processes so that we can meet our targets.
So I certainly encourage a focus on that. With the extra 5 years, there won't be any good reason for not being able to do that.
That's very true, and it does. The contracting process and the procurement process have certainly gotten more complicated over the years. So, I've been working with these programs for over 20 years, and I certainly have seen the complexity of the process grow. So that has to be taken into account as well.
And I know we can technically get out of contracts. How much of a difficulty is it to do that if we find that we're in a contract that we wish had been shorter, and it goes through the full 5 years? Is it actually practical? If it's not life and death bad, but it's clearly worse than you would like, how hard will it be to get out of those contracts earlier?
Well, every contract has the ability to provide for sort of an at-will termination. So typically, the notification for that could be 60 days or 30 days or 90 days. But with these contracts in particular, we would, if we saw some type of problem, some need for us to want to terminate a contract earlier, then because we design and implement the programs on a plan year basis, and we actually have deadlines that we have to adhere to well in advance of the actual plan year. That's the part of it that would require kind of work on our part. It's not so much the actual exiting of the contract as it really is engaging in the process to select the new vendor. That needs to happen much earlier.
Okay, and I have one speaker from the public, Mr. Herman.
Now, in this arrangements for recommendations for this possible 5-year term under contract extensions required for a master contracting schedule. This is regarding dental insurance, life insurance, disability insurance, accidental death, and dismemberment of insurance. That means when you die, you have no more insurance. Disconnected, dead. Tax advantage saving programs, employee assistance program, and consulting services. So in conclusion, contained within this report that I'm reading offhand, for the flexibility of benefits and programs to establish best practice, efficiencies for issuing such contracts, JLMBC recommends that the City Council approve recommendations for the long-term authority to enter into a 5-year contract for the benefit program service. Well, I disagree. I disagree because I think the members of this contract, or the so-called insurance benefits of the civilian that are secured under their insurance of the city, should be overviewed by its population of protected workers. What the hell do you mean by that, Mr. Herman? It means that your personnel should have some say-so in the conditions and contracts affecting the quality of life, the benefits that will ensure their well-being so that they can be reemployed or considered bye-bye for vacation.
Thank you, Mr. Herman. And we'll move item 5 without objection. We'll approve the recommendations in the Personnel Department report. So,
Thank you very much.
Item number 6.
Item 6, Department of Animal Services report relative to approval of interim memorandum of understanding for providing animal care and control services to the city of Beverly Hills.
Good afternoon, council members. My name is John Forland with the Department of Animal Services. I'm here today to request City Council approval by this committee for City Council approval of an interim memorandum of understanding for providing animal care and control services to the City of Beverly Hills. And the department and the city has had an agreement with Beverly Hills for 3 years beginning in 2009 that expired January 31 of 2012. And it's taken some time to work out the negotiation with them to continue. We provided animal control services, licensing, and other services to the city under contract. Prior to that, the County of Los Angeles provided services, and the nearest shelter they had was in the city of Carson. And we probably certainly had a situation where residents of Beverly Hills would just bring animals to our West LA shelter and say that they had found it. So we figured since we were ending up with the animals in the shelter anyway, that it would be a good thing to go ahead and develop a contract and be reimbursed for those services. So it took us some time, and we did develop a contract. And we want to, both sides feel that it's very positive for a number of reasons. We're getting reimbursed for the services we're probably providing anyway. They like the quality of our services and the proximity of our shelter, and wish to continue it. It's important to us both, but not necessarily a major contract. I made some notes based on the first MOU that our officers provide a service of about 10 hours a month to Beverly Hills, average about 100 licenses a month for their residents, and West LA Shelter takes in about 12 animals a month on average. So as time passed and it had expired, we were not being reimbursed for our services, and we have had some issues to work out, one on developing hearings that were satisfactory in terms of the timing for the city of Beverly Hills. They had a significant issue, and we were kind of at a stalemate for a number of months, but that's been resolved. And we still have 11 different ordinances the city of Beverly Hills has to review to make a decision on. And this is an interim agreement, so we will be coming back soon with a regular or a permanent MOU. This one will sunset by December 31st, 2015. But we pretty much had to go through the full terms of the MOU to get this interim contract put together. But we've been meeting with Beverly Hills for the last 3 months. They're satisfied with what we're doing. So I'm happy to be here today to request approval of this so that we can move forward.
How much do they owe us currently?
About $140,000.
And are they going to pay that before we start this deal or no?
They are prepared to. In fact, if we are able to get this approved by council this month, they will encumber funds in this fiscal year. If not, they'll be able to encumber in July.
And is there any benefit to the city to be providing this service?
Well, in addition to getting some reimbursement for the services we're already providing, it's a very good area for us. There are some foundations located in Beverly Hills that we work with regularly, some donors that we've had ongoing relationships for many years. Some of our more difficult calls for animal or for wildlife in danger come in that area, and they like the quality of the skills of our officers in that area out in West LA. So it's also, we have a relationship with Best Friends, and they have a adoption center out there. So there are many reasons that adjacent to the agreement that make it very useful.
So we expect to be able to do this longer term, though, right? We expect some sort of a arrangement after December 31st.
Oh, certainly we do, yes. That's our key, is to move forward with a 3 or 5 year contract to continue this.
Very good. Mr. O'Farrell?
Thank you, Mr. President. So are they paying us roughly $47,000, $48,000 a year? So you're talking about
yes.
lapsed in 3 years ago.
Yes.
So is that about right? So
yes.
The $140,000, is that completely, are they completely paid off if they pay that figure, in other words?
Yeah, that would bring them current to the most recent billed month.
And so previous to that, the MOU went from 09 to 12.
Yes.
Were they current with their payments in that period? Why are they in arrears now, in other words? Just because the MOU lapsed?
The MOU lapsed. Even in addition to that, we had 2 months right at the end that they did not get paid. They did not pay us for December and January. And so that's included. We've set the date retroactively to December 1st, 2011, so we can pick up reimbursement for those 2 months.
And so then it goes until the end of this year.
Yes.
And then we would need to enter into another MOU. And you're satisfied that the ordinances that they have to approve will take care of that on the Beverly Hills side of things, that'll take care of any sort of loose ends that need to be, sorted out so that we don't end up in this situation again 3 years from now?
I do. I think the key, initially when we negotiated the first MOU, it took 3.5 years. And the big stumbling point was the ordinances. And the final way to resolve that was the city of LA said, just adopt our municipal code. And they did. And I think in this case, that's a solution that's going to get us moving forward. We've resolved everything else except the adoption of the 11 ordinances. And I think the solution is to ask them to just adopt them all. And then we can move forward.
So the ordinances that we're talking about are ours. We
Yes.
just want them to adopt them.
Yes.
Do we have any contracts? Are we providing this type of service to other municipalities?
We are not. This is the only one.
The only city?
We've been contacted a couple of different times by Century City when they see what we're doing in Beverly Hills, but they haven't asked us to develop an MOU at this point.
So there are no other MOUs that have lapsed that you're aware of that Animal Services is contracting with anyone else at?
Correct.
Okay. What might we need to do to, so if we move this forward and we definitely want them to, reimburse us for services rendered, are there any steps that we need to take so, in advance of the end of the calendar year, so that, this doesn't happen again, or?
I wouldn't ask you to put us under a timeline, but that would be useful to get this done.
Council members, Janice Yu, Office of the CEO, what we would recommend is that in addition to approving the interim MOU, that the committee and council instruct the department to report back on a replacement MOU prior to the ending of this MOU for a longer term to replace the interim, to report back to council.
Do you have a date that you'd recommend?
I would recommend within 90 days.
Just the reason I bring it up is just we have such a cash flow problem, especially with this department at times, and I just want to make sure that if there's something we can do to 3 years in arrears is a long time, but I understand through your explanation how it happened.
The department should be diligent, and we all should. It just takes a lot of time to negotiate an MOU to let this interim agreement expire would be counterproductive. We already work with a low overhead anyway, so we just need to be diligent to see that we get that MOU.
And lastly, we need all the funds we can get for this department. Does some of this, at the end of the day, help towards spay neuter? Some of this money?
The cash, actually, it doesn't affect our department budget directly.
Okay.
So actually the MOU does provide revenue for us. We turn around in our billings and net it right back out. So there's no cash money to us for spay and neuter. This would be cash for the city's general fund. Our budget is set separately.
Okay.
But it's important.
Yeah, no, that is important. I was just wondering if there's an opportunity to, if we're going to enter into agreements with other municipalities,
Yeah.
if there is some sort of benefit, that we can leverage to actually go toward our number one goal, and that is the reduction of euthanasia rates.
Indirectly, one of our donors is from that city who does support increasing adoptions at our shelters, and that does generate, through the surcharge, it does generate money that goes directly into our sterilization fund. So in that way, it's not direct, but indirect is very helpful.
And lastly, I just thought of this randomly. Do we do pet adoptions in Beverly Hills?
We do special events, yes, in the city or adjacent to the city.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just trying to think of other opportunities.
That's very useful. Our West LA shelter is probably the strongest in generating adoptions.
Great.
They certainly meet all the no-kill criteria.
And are we able to charge more than essentially our costs for doing this? Can we
you asked
can we
that.
build in a little profit for the purpose that Mr. O'Farrell suggested, or is that not possible?
Well, I would say we are able to fully recover all our costs, our direct costs, indirect, and overhead. And the city of Beverly Hills has no problem with that. So we make sure we recover everything.
But that's all we're allowed to do.
That's right.
Okay.
You bring up a good point, Mr. J. If we're providing a service, if we're a business, we would be providing a service plus profit. I wonder if that's a way we could think about it. You can't do it?
We're a nonprofit.
But to be directed back into our core mission, not for the sake of anything other than that.
And generally speaking, when you're charging for a service, you recover the the cost of that service.
I'll never use the term profit again.
Thank you.
Full cost recovery.
It makes a difference, yes.
Well, so we can't do full cost recovery plus, in other words.
We can underline full.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentations. We have one member of the public wishing to speak, and that is Mr. Herman on item number 6.
Well, in regards to this Carson Animal Care, and when we're talking about reimbursement and costs and a small fee of $140,000, I remind the public again that charges and rates are set annually by a city, and they become effective each year, and such charges are determined for a full cost of recovery. But if the city of Los Angeles is not in the business of recovering a small amount of $140,000, how are they to retrieve a reimbursement to a city that exceeds $240,000 for any 12-month period? So if we're in the business as a city to get our reimbursements back, then I suggest that maybe a lien process be enforced when monies are not recovered to benefit the stakeholders of Los Angeles who are the ones taking the hit. This money could be used for many aspects of animal shelters, possibly hiring a person, possibly feeding the animals better, giving them better treatment. Now, Beverly Hills has quite a bit of money where they can take care of most of their animals financially. But in the low end, people in minority areas have to sacrifice their animals to what they call the chopping block, kill them. So listen to Daniel Gus from Van Nuys. He has many points about animal services. Thank you.
Thank you. And so, without objection, hopefully we will approve the Animal Services Commission's recommendations on an interim MOU with Beverly Hills, and we will ask the department to return in 90 days with a proposed longer-term MOU. And hearing no objections, that will be approved. And having no other business before us, we are adjourned.